Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan Lugo. Thanks so much for tuning in here on Wednesday, December 11th, second show of the day for y'all. So right now we're taking a look at how we can improve this Jacksonville Jaguars roster at the wide receiver position. It's an early look at how things could change for the Jaguars at wide receiver in 2025. This team is mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. You're expecting big changes, whether it be at head coach, general manager, both. You're expecting major shakeups, major changes with this football team, with the power structure here. But at wide receiver, there are some foundational pieces you have, at least one, right, that you can feel absolutely fired up about. And then there's some question marks, and there's also some improvement that needs to be made from a talent standpoint heading into 2025, in a year in which there should be no doubt about whoever comes in here, whoever is leading this thing. This should not be a rebuilding year in terms of we're not expecting to go to the playoffs. We're not expecting to win the division. We're not expecting to make moves. Whoever is leading this thing in 2025, the expectation should be to compete at the highest level, because there's a baseline level of talent here that can get you there. You have so many resources via free agency and the draft to help get you there. And so that should be the expectation. It's going to be about how they go about trying to improve the roster and the culture and the scheming on both sides to get there. So you've got to improve at wide receiver. You absolutely do. I think the first order of business is making a decision about Christian Kirk, who he's ended the last two seasons on injured reserve, which is obviously super unfortunate. I don't really view him as like a injury plagued guy, as a injury risk. But I mean, now you look at the last 2 years and that has been the case, unfortunately. The Jaguars would save $10 million in cap space by moving on. There will still be a pretty big dead cap hit, but Shad Khan doesn't really worry about that. If you tell him, hey, we're going to save $10 million by moving on and it's going to help us do X, Y, and Z, then you can do that. And I'm not saying that's what the Jaguars should do. I'm just saying that is a decision they have to make. If you decide to move on from Christian Kirk, you probably need to get competition in the slot, right? If you don't, you've got Kirk. You've got a upper echelon, not like elite top slot receiver, but an upper echelon slot receiver in this league. And you've got Brian Thomas Jr., but on the other side, you need somebody. You need somebody opposite Brian Thomas Jr. on the outside that can be a real 1-2 punch. You obviously feel really excited about Brian Thomas Jr. and what he brings to this football team and what he gives this offense, and continuing to grow with Trevor Lawrence and what he provides Trevor Lawrence within this offense. The speed element, the size, the kind of subtle like slitheriness that he brings to the field. I mean, he's just such an incredible talent, and the sky is the limit. He's going to keep growing with Trevor Lawrence. So he's your number one alpha target to get excited about, obviously. And you also have Parker Washington, who I'm planning on continuing to develop Parker Washington as a slot, as a returner, continuing to develop him. Not guaranteeing him anything in terms of like playing time or anything like that, but keep him on the roster, continue to develop him, and if he can earn a role, potentially a bigger role, good. If not, keep on working at it, right? I think he has the talent to do it. So again, we need at very minimum at least an outside receiver to complement Brian Thomas Jr. And if you move on from Christian Kirk, I think you also would be adding slot competition for Parker Washington, because you don't want to just hand him the job, in my opinion, at slot. Obviously, Gabe Davis will be in Jacksonville next year unless like they're able to, somebody's willing to give up a 7th round pick. I don't know. I think you would probably actually have to trade more valuable draft capital and Gabe Davis than you're getting back for someone to take on his contract. In all likelihood, he'll just be here next year, because look, let's look at the numbers on that contract real quick. It's not pretty for 2025. And as much as I do think Gabe Davis has dealt with injuries this year, going back to like the summer, he has dealt with injuries. Um, it's just clear that he probably shouldn't be viewed as your starter, and the Bills kind of told you that by letting him walk as a 25-year-old player that they drafted. Just letting him walk. But if you cut Gabe Davis pre-June 1, that's $20 million in dead money, and it doesn't help your cap at all. If you cut him post-June 1, it doesn't help you at all. I mean, you're either trading him or keeping him on the roster. And I don't think anybody's trading him. So I think he will be on the roster. But just because you have put a lot of money into Gabe Davis does not mean you need to rely on him or guarantee him that he can be a starter here. That's sunk cost. You need to try to improve what you have. And like if Gabe Davis is your fourth receiver, your fourth or fifth receiving option, sure. I mean, he can have utility in that regard because he's a good blocker. He's big. He's physical. He can do some things. It's been a bad year for him, but it's been a bad year for a lot of folks. Use him in that regard in 2025, and then you probably move on after that. There's a lot of potential free agents set to hit the open market that could be exciting. Now, will some of them sign where they are? That's always a good chance. And it's not like a massive list of really exciting guys that are coming out, but T. Higgins could be a free agent. He has a connection from college with Trevor Lawrence. They put up a lot of touchdowns, put up a lot of points at Clemson together. I was thinking about it too today. That Clemson team, those teams they had there were unbelievable. Unbelievable teams that they had at Clemson. Looking around the league at some of those stars. But T. Higgins, if you can land him, obviously, that would be tremendous to pair up with BTJ while BTJ is on a rookie deal. Amari Cooper is also going to be a free agent, and he's 30 years old, but I think he's still playing darn good football. Had a little bit of a case of the drops early on in the year, but I think since getting to Buffalo, he's kind of straightened that up. And pairing him up with Brian Thomas Jr. and Trevor Lawrence would be, in my opinion, really solid. He's a great route runner, and he has the ability to go up and get the football. He has the ability to separate. He can get down the field and get open. So I think he provides another vertical threat, an outside threat to pair with BT, and I think that could be really good. And I think Brian Thomas could definitely learn some things from Amari Cooper as a veteran who was a former high draft pick who has been very productive and very valuable in this league for a long time. Chris Godwin is set to hit free agency, and I think he's dealing with an injury right now, if I'm not mistaken. Verify that. But and he's dealt with some injuries throughout his career. He's played a lot in the slot. He's also played a lot outside. Yeah, Chris Godwin is having an ankle surgery. So, yeah. He's going to have to deal with that and come back from that. But he's 28. I think he's about to be 29. And Chris Godwin, whether you're playing him outside or in the slot or a combination of both, he's been a stud at the NFL level. I think he would be a clear upgrade from Christian Kirk for you if you want to just go in that direction. DeAndre Hopkins, he's up there in age, no doubt about it, but I think he would be a big upgrade for you. Then you've got guys like, Stephon Diggs. He's been very vocal about some things he hasn't liked throughout his career. I think you can put Deontay Johnson in that same category as maybe a malcontent type of situation. Keenan Allen up there in age. Would you rather just stick with Christian Kirk? I think Allen's a better player, but Kirk is younger and has the rapport with Trevor. Brandon Cook's up there in age as well. Some major questions. Then Hollywood Brown's going to be coming off the injury. Again, big questions, but potentially big talent. Those are some swings you could take if you're not like going after T. Higgins or Amari Cooper, who I think would be the top two guys. Chris Godwin maybe too. If you take a swing at one of the lower price type of guys, maybe you address it more in the draft. I think you're going to go after it in the draft anyways, but like I'm probably taking at least one or two guys in the draft. And when you look at the draft, I mean, the Jaguars, they could hit it hard with their first pick. I mean, it's possible that your boy Travis Hunter is there when they pick. Tedero McMillan, it's possible he will be there. Both of those guys would be tremendous options. Luther Burden, if the Jaguars are picking top 5 like they are right now, or top 10, is Luther Burden going to be the best possible player you could select on the board? Maybe not. But I think if he was in a different situation in college, different school, he would be viewed as a top 10 prospect in this class. And for me, he's just like right outside the top 10. I think he's like 12 on my board. Super explosive, great hands. I think he would be fantastic for this offense. Emeka Ibuka, he can play some outside, but he's going to probably play predominantly, over 50% of his snaps in the slot at the next level. I think he would be an upgrade pretty quickly from Christian Kirk if you're looking in that direction. Isaiah Bond, supreme athlete, good route runner. It looks like, from a physical standpoint, I think he tracks the ball well, adjusts the ball well down the field. He hasn't been super featured in their offense at Texas for whatever reason. Trey Harris out of Ole Miss could be a good fit. I think people are talking about him as like an early second rounder. I don't have him there. Same thing about Elike Omanor out of Stanford. Xavier Restrepo is going to be a slot. Jalen Royals, he's coming off of a foot injury as well, but he's super explosive, but I don't think you would look at him and say for sure he's going to be that type of guy for you. Evan Stewart out of Oregon has crazy athleticism, hasn't been that consistent contributor yet. Kyron Lacey has ups and downs. I mean, there's some focus drops at times. I don't think he's a super athlete. Tez Johnson, I think, is going to be a tremendous slot receiver. He's going to be 160 pounds, so there's risk reward there. I love Torrey Horton out of Colorado State. I love Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State. So those are some guys that I would be willing to take a swing on day 2. Probably a little bit earlier than some folks have talked about. But there's options certainly in the draft. I don't think this draft is as bountiful potentially as some other drafts that we've had in the recent memory at wide receiver, but there's options. Jalen Knoll as well has operated a lot out of the slot. Pat Bryant, who's a local kid out of Illinois by way of Atlantic Coast High School, I believe. Daniel Jackson from Minnesota, I think, is a guy that might have to play more in the slot at the next level, but he's a good player. So there's guys that could come in and complement. But when you're talking about for this offense to reach its peak, I do think you absolutely need to upgrade the interior of the offensive line. At guard, center long term as well. Ezra Cleveland's going to be your starting left guard. I'm talking about right guard. And again, Brandon Sheriff does a heck of a job in pass pro, but he just doesn't get any push in the run game, and Mitch Morse doesn't really either at this point consistently. If you're talking about landing a true, like, getting a situation, trying to get a situation like what the Bengals have with Higgins and Chase, or like the Eagles with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, I think you're probably going to need to land like Tedero McMillan or Luther Burden to really get someone of that talent level. Or, again, there's free agency options. Probably not long-term options outside of T. Higgins, but that's kind of where I'm at with this Jaguars offseason at receiver, and we're going to continue to look at all these different spots where the Jaguars can improve throughout the offseason. And it's just an early look. I know y'all are enjoying some of these looks ahead because right now there's just not a lot of fun to talk about. We will talk about the Jaguars and the Jets game. Talk to y'all about why you should tune in this weekend, maybe why you should get down to the bank and have a little bit of a good time on a Sunday, hopefully. But yeah, that's my look at wide receiver. The Jaguars have work to do. Gabe Davis will probably be here. Will Christian Kirk be here? We don't know. But you do know Brian Thomas Jr. is kind of that foundational piece you have. Now you need to go add at least one guy to really complement him as another outside receiver so you can create that dynamic passing attack again, like the Philadelphia Eagles have with Smith and Brown, like the Cincinnati Bengals have. Miami Dolphins. I mean, look around the league at some of the most explosive offenses, some of the offenses that are most difficult to stop. They usually have multiple really, really good starting receivers. So, again, that'll do it. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoyed the content, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Y'all have a good one.